choice.
Is it all multiple?
All multiple choice. Yeah, don't get too excited.
Well, it's better than
Thanks.
me having
Talk about crushing my hopes. Wait, class.
Yes, it A to D. It is just A through D. We were told by we had like a testing group come in a couple of years ago, and we were told that it's not fair to have 5 options. And like we also had the options of like none of these or all of these.
Those aren't fair.
And we were told that that isn't like, that's because they took those questions off the SATs, like they eliminated that option. So we.
Wait, why is there 5 options on the
Okay,
slide?
I'm cool with 5. Not the none of these are all of these.
Yeah. So we eliminated those as options. Like there could be like A and B are true, or like C and D are both solutions kind of thing, but there's not in all of these, none of these options.
Like, how many points here?
It's 50 questions, so it's 50 points. Like in my mind, the points does not matter because it's a percentage. So I could make the word 500 points and it's still just a percentage of your grade.
How much percentage?
It's 5%.
So if we got a 0 on this, our grade would drop down to 5%.
Exactly.
Wow.
So if you have, like at the end of the year, if you have a 90%, but you get a 0 on one of the 2, you're down to an 85.
But if we get a 100, we go
Then you'd
up 5%.
Right.
Nice.
But
We're gonna get
okay, so also so it's chapters 1 through 6. We're going to review them right now. The first day is totally different from the second day, so the concepts that you're tested on are different. But again, it's still all of 1 through 6, and it's not in order. So the first question might start with chapter 6. The second question jumps to chapter 1. So it does just bounce back and forth. But that's how a traditional standardized test is. So like if you take any other standardized test, like it is just concepts grabbed through all of the material.
I was just wondering for the first one, so I was thinking, do we have to do the number 1?
Yes. If it's an inequality, yes, you have to do. Yes. Better than the honest, you're gonna be calculated term.
That's not a good answer.
Yeah, this is
That's
almost
not a good
I think, like depending on your version of well, like I feel like if it's an 85% average, that's pretty good. Especially for a midterm exam. So, but generally in here, your averages are around, like the test average is around that 85%-ish range. So,
I have a question about like number 40, like the
okay,
answer
I'll
sheet.
answer it.
It's just the answer sheet. It's like a 9, and I don't understand where, like, it doesn't work in the
Number 40,
Yeah.
0 and negative 5.
Oh, I thought it was a 9. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I looked at it wrong.
Yeah, that's a comma after the 0. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Would it be possible to like take the chapter 6 test tomorrow and give it?
Yeah. Make sure you're here by 7.
Okay, can I do that?
Wake up earlier.
That or you can take it in class tomorrow,
Oh, what are we gonna be doing?
reviewing. So it's up to you. Do you want to miss review?
I don't want to.
Can I take my test?
Yeah, but again, be here by 7 because you have to get to your first period class. So you get here 5 minutes before 7. But you need, like, you cannot stay and finish. You've got to get to your first period class.
Well, can we finish after school?
No, not an option. All right, so if you look at the first couple of problems on here, it does say solve the following equations and inequalities, and it also says graph all inequalities on a number line. Yes, you need to graph the inequalities. If it's not graphed, the problem isn't solved when it's an inequality. So an inequality's answer is not just x equals, but it's x is greater than, and along with every inequality is a graph, shaded in some way. I'm not going to go through these 3. You're just trying to get x by itself, which is what we've done pretty much all year, just different type of equations. But if you look at number 5 is a compound inequality, which means you have an expression in the middle, 2 inequality signs on the left and the right, and you have to make sure that whatever you do to the middle value to solve to get x by itself, that you're doing to both sides of the inequality. So we would add 1, but that means we have to add 1 to the 8 and add 1 to the 2. So that gives us 3 is less than or equal to, less than 3, which is less than or equal to 9. And then to get x by itself, you're dividing by 3, but again, every piece gets divided by 3. So with equations, you have to make sure you do the same thing on the left and the right. With an inequality, yeah, if there's 2 inequality symbols, you've got to do the same thing on both sides. So make sure that you're graphing that on a number line after you have it solved, because it is asking for both parts there. So we would have 1 is less than x, which is less than or equal to 3. And then the number line doesn't have to be like super fancy. I mean, just a couple of points on here. But when you're graphing on a number line, if it's x is greater than 1, so reading from the x in the middle, what do you do with the value of 1? Put an open circle. And then Ryan, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to 3 means?
Full shaded.
Yeah, yep, the full shaded circle. And then it's in between. So it's bigger than 1 but less than 3, so you're in between those two values. Whenever x is in between two numbers, that means your answer has to be in between those two numbers as well. David? Correct. You only do a number line if it's an inequality.
Oh, so that makes more sense.
You don't have to do anything for the equal ones. So the inequality gets the number line. Only the inequalities. Jen? So or means, this is an and problem, so this is considered an and problem. Or the shading is on the outside, so you're shading like to the left, you're shading to the right. You're still solving both of those. So and means the solution is in between those 2 points. Or means it's going to be less than one number, or it's going to be greater than the other number. So solve those two, graph them on a number line, but your shading will be on the outside. Looking at the second set of problems, the last 5 here, they're all absolute value. And I wanted to talk about number 9 because this is one of those that I want to show you like how multiple choice works. And number 9 is a good one to work with. What do you do with absolute values to solve it? Grace? Right. She said it could be negative or it could be positive. So the distance a number is from 0 is the definition of absolute value. Well, the distance a number is from 0, you can have a negative side and have the same distance. You can have a positive side and have the same distance from 0. So when you solve the equation, you've got to account for that fact that there is a negative side of 0 and a positive side of 0. So one equation, x plus 24 is equal to negative 7x. The equation stays the same. The other equation, you have to make it opposite of what's already up there. And you lose the absolute value bars. Like, you're not solving it with the absolute value bars. They go away by creating the 2 equations. So then to get x, like we'd subtract the x. So that makes a negative 8x. When you divide by 3, one solution is x equals negative 3. On the other side, you subtract x. We get 6. So 6x is equal to 24, which means x is equal to positive 4. So if this is multiple choice and you circle this answer, it's wrong. But this is going to be an answer on the multiple choice test. But it's wrong. The answer. There's an extraneous solution. So absolute value has extraneous solutions. That was the first time we talked about extraneous solutions back in chapter 2. Or is this chapter 1? This is chapter 1. So an extraneous solution is an answer that does not work when you check it into the original problem. Yesterday on your test you had problems with extraneous solutions. Any radical problem could have an extraneous solution. So you need to check it into the original problem. So going back up here, you're taking the negative 3 and plugging it in. where the absolute values are. So you're keeping the absolute values to check it. So we have negative 3 plus 24, which is 21. Negative 7 times negative 3 is also 21. Absolute value makes every number positive because it's the distance the number is from 0. So that one works. The second one, x equals 4. We have 4 plus 24, and negative 7 times 4. Well, that makes 28, but on the other side, negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. Positive 28 does not equal negative 28. So 4 is extraneous. But if you don't remember that, you've got the problem wrong. Because it's multiple choice. And the correct answer is going to be up there. But the other answer is also going to be up there, the one that you would get just by solving. Okay.
Would we get points for work on that?
No. So it's right or wrong, it's multiple choice. So, like, no, I'm not purposely trying to trick you, but as a teacher, I need to know, do you understand the whole concept of the problem? So it's not like that I'm tricking you, but if you don't remember that extraneous solutions exist, then you are going to miss the problem. David?
For like absolute values, how you have to like write two equations, is it only like the value on the opposite side?
On the opposite side, yes. Virginia?
So you said some are going to have two answers. Is it going to tell you when it might have two answers?
If you look at 10 and 11, just to kind of remind you about inequalities, so you still have to create two, separate them into two parts. So 3w minus 15 is less than 30. What does the other inequality look like? Virginia? You have to switch it. So again, with the answer, like there are going to be answers there that the sign wasn't flipped, and then there are going to be answers where the sign is flipped. So when you make it negative, like we say you switch it and flip it. So you're switching it to negative, you're flipping the sign. So switch it and flip it. Anytime you switch something from positive to negative, you flip the sign when it comes to an inequality. So we would add 15. So W should be less than 15. When you add 15, W is greater than negative 5. Make sure you graph it on a number line so the solution also gets attached to a number line. So it should be greater than negative 5 and less than 15. Any questions with absolute value? So remember, it's two equations. When there's up here equations, you want to make sure you're checking your answers. Page.
I was gonna say, is there an extraneous solution for if it's greater than?
Not for inequalities, yeah. The extraneous solution only comes about when there's an x on both sides of the equation. So that's why an extraneous solution is there, because an x on the other side creates the variable part where it could be multiple values. Questions on the first page that I didn't go over? So then if you look at the next page, at the top talks about functions, which we just reviewed in chapter 6. So we looked at domain, range, functions. Remember, a function has to pass the vertical line test, looking at the graph. But a function also has to have each x attached to one y. So if there's an x repeated, then it's not a function. So looking at the x values, that's what you're focusing on. Is x repeated, or does one x value have one y value? And then it does say to explain your answer. So I know it's multiple choice, but make sure you have a reasoning behind why you're thinking about, yes, it's a function, no, it isn't a function. Second group of problems I want to talk about here, they're just two, but this is from section 2.4 when we did all the writing equations of lines. 16 says write the equation of a line that passes through a pair of points. What do you have to write an equation of a line? Aaron?
The slope.
You need the slope. How do you find the slope, Aaron?
If it's y over x minus y1 over x1 minus y2 x.
Yeah.
y2
You're right. So he has it. So y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, or you could say y1 minus y2, sorry, and x1 minus x2. You could have them in either way. As long as you like subtract left from right, or keeping them consistent, doing the same with the x and the y. So for number 16, you need to find the slope, and then you're taking one of the ordered pairs, you're plugging it in, and finding the y-intercept. So first find slope, and then find the y-intercept, or the b. So remember, we've got that y equals mx plus b. That was the equation of a line. I'm going to work through number 17 with you because I think this was like the most missed type of problem.
So with problems like these, they're always going to be like your basic y equals mx plus b linear equations.
Yeah, if it says find the equation of a line, so that would be the key thing there. Yes. Yeah. So number 17 again says write the equation of a line that passes through the point negative 1, 8 and is perpendicular to a second line, y equals 1/5 x plus 4. So they're giving you a line, and our goal is to come up with a second line that would be perpendicular with this. Kate, do you remember what to do?
Would you use point slope form with this one?
You can use point slope form. Point slope form was y minus y1, and then x minus x1. You don't have to, but I can show you point slope form. Do you remember anything else about it, Kate?
Yeah, perpendicular slopes are opposite the circles.
Right, so right here is the current slope of the line, 1/5. A perpendicular slope is the opposite sign, meaning if this is positive, it has to be negative, and the reciprocal. So if it's 1/5, the reciprocal is 5/1. So my perpendicular slope should be -5. So you can use either y equals mx plus b, or you can use point slope form, whichever one you're comfortable with, but the m is -5. If you have an ordered pair represents which letters? H. X and y. In this case, if you use point slope form, it's x1, y1. If you use slope intercept form, and we can do both, it's just the x and the y. So depending which form you want to use. So if I'm using point slope, I would have y minus 8, and x minus a -1 is +1. Over here, for y-intercept form, we would have 8 equals -5 times -1 plus b. So you can kind of see the difference. It's going to get you to the same value. So when you get y by itself for point slope form, or you're solving for b for y-intercept form. But you don't know b in this case. Like that's what we're trying to find. Over here, there's not a b in the problem, so you're just trying to get y by itself. But here is -5x. When you add the 8, you get +3. So that's already then your equation, which is why I like point slope form, because now you have your equation. In the other case, you're solving for b, so 8 is equal to 5 plus b. Well, b is going to be 3, so the equation is -5x plus b, which is +3. So point slope form, you don't need to even worry about that extra variable, the b, because you're just getting y by itself. But you get the same answer either way. Questions on that? So perpendicular, you have to take the slope, find the slope, and use the points. This 4 has nothing to do with my new line, and that's where everybody gets confused. Like so many people want to try and use this 4 that you're given in the original line and try and apply it to the new line. It actually isn't necessary. Like it has no effect on the new line whatsoever. It's just the slope that you need to worry about. So there are 2 other types of problems that I want to talk about today. Each day I'll try and get to like a different section of problems. So like the first 2 chapters, we'll go over chapters 3 and 4 tomorrow. Hopefully 5 and 6 should be the freshest because it was the most recent stuff that we've talked about. But in this next group of problems here, it says x and y vary directly, and that's the key wording. Write an equation that relates x and y. Find y when x equals 6. So there's 2 things. You're asked to write an equation, and then find out what y is when x is 6. Does anybody remember the equation when it says they vary directly? Grace? It is y equals ax. So it's still a line. The special thing about direct variation is that it goes directly through your origin. So it's a special kind of line. So instead of using y equals mx plus b, because every direct variation goes through the origin, it doesn't have a y-intercept. So it gets a little bit of new equation, y equals ax. So a is still slope, but it doesn't have that plus b value because it's always 0. So if you have the x and the y, you plug them into the equation. If they're giving you x and y, use them in the equation that correlates with whatever problem we're dealing with. So in this case, y is 8. I don't know a because we have to find the slope. And the x is 4. Anytime you're given an ordered pair, like your goal is to use that ordered pair to find something in your problem. And in this case, we don't know the slope, so that would be a equals 2. So write an equation that relates x and y. Well, now I found a, so an equation needs to have x and y. So my equation now uses the a that we've just calculated. So your equation is y equals 2x. No b value, because there isn't a b to be found that goes through the origin. The second part says find the y when x is 6. So we just want to know what y would be if x is 6 and y would be 12. So 2 parts. In the equation using x and y, remembering what direct variation means or what varying directly means. And then the second step would be to use the 6 in the equation you just calculated. Questions? So the last thing that I want to look at would be the top of the next page. These are graphing equations and inequalities. The first 2 are absolute value graphs. What did we say an absolute value graph looks like? Page? A V. So the absolute value graph is a V. It has a vertex, and the vertex are the letters H and K. A parabola also has a vertex form with H and K. And the critical points of the root functions that you just graphed use H and K. So H and K, now 4 different graphs that we've looked at use the H and K value. So in number 20 is what would the vertex be?
2, 5. No, -2, -5.
There you go, -2, -5. So opposite of whatever's inside, the outside stays the same. So even though it's a +5, it really moves to the left 5. So with absolute value, you plot that point. Like that's the important point of the graph. If it's in the equation, it's the important piece of the graph. So over 2, down 5. Now this is supposed to be a V. It's really a line going positive and a line going negative connecting together. They have the same slope. So it's the same steepness, it's just one goes down, the other one goes up to connect to make a V. What's the slope of this absolute value graph? Okay, 1. So whatever number's in front is the slope. So from this V, you need to rise 1 and then go left and right because it should look like a V. So rise 1, right 1. Going back to the vertex, go up and then left because that creates the negative side of your graph. So it's a negative and a positive slope connecting together at that vertex. Now obviously this is multiple choice, so you're going to have the picture, you're going to have to match the picture with the equation. So you'll be looking at like where's the H and K, what's the slope of the 2 lines that are creating the V. So the picture will be there, you'll have to match it to the equation. Any questions? So you have about 12 minutes. I'm going to start walking around and answering questions. Again, this is until Tuesday, and you'll have class time to work on it. So kind of just pace yourself as you're working through the problems. And please ask questions, work with a partner, use this time to your benefit so that you're getting things done in class.